Today on Aspiring Women. Ever wonder why in-law relationships can be so challenging?
When you're learning to dance, you get to pick your own partner. But in an in-law situation, someone else chooses.
Well, welcome to AW. We're so glad that you're with us today. We've got a great, steamy, dicey show. We're going to be talking about mothers-in-law. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a hot button.
It is a hot button.
It is.
Okay, now, Shirley, you are the token mother-in-law of the
Yes,
group.
I am.
And what do they call you? Do they call you Mom, Shirley?
No, they call me Shirley because, you know, when the dating started, they call me Mrs. Rose, and then right away I'm like, I'm Shirley. So that just kind of carried over. But I think Mom would be nice, but
Would
no.
it?
None of them.
Well, I've had a couple boyfriends I've gotten attached to their mothers, and I call them Ma. That because I don't, you know,
Okay.
I have a assigned name for my mommy, and you know, but yeah.
It is kind of a, you know, I look at men, and do you ever look at men and see the way they treat their mothers? I mean, do you think there's any correlation
Oh,
how
most
that...
definitely.
You do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think there is.
What if the mother is, like, kind of crazy? I mean, and you're not.
Well, you're crazy, but still watching how
Yeah,
he
watch
deals
how
with
they
her
react.
madness
Exactly.
will still reflect with you too.
Watch how they react. That's very important. Well, can two women love the same man? That's just what happens when a son gets married. Move over, Mom. There's a new girl in town. Well, here's some advice from author Annie Chapman.
What makes the relationship between mothers and their daughters-in-law so unique and often challenging?
Usually when you're learning to dance, you get to pick your own partner. But in an in-law situation, someone else chooses your partner. And you have no say. And they bring this young woman there, and by law, she is considered your daughter now. And you're supposed to be able to just do this fluid, lovely exchange with someone you don't even know. Another way of putting it, wife trumps mom every time. And that's not always easy to hear, and it's sure not easy to do. When the son and the young bride are at the front of the church, and he's making all these promises, and he says, I do, then the mom is done. And that's tough. So why? Everything in us as a mother is we give. And we do all these things for our kids, and then all of a sudden it's like a screeching halt.
That's true.
And so there's an adjustment there.
Well, you have interviewed a lot of mothers and a lot of daughters-in-law. What are the biggest mistakes that we mothers make?
The same characteristics that make us incredible mothers to small children make us horrible mothers to adult children.
Wow.
And we just have to find it within ourselves, kind of suck up and just find that maturity to turn the mommy faucet off when our sons get married.
How about financial support, helping your kids out financially? Or how about control? I mean, those are hot buttons.
Yeah.
And how do we know how to approach those?
One day I was praying for my son, and I was just saying, Lord, I just want to give him some money so I don't have to worry about him. You know, it was about me. Everything's about me, okay? I grew up on a farm in West Virginia, and every spring the old hens would hide the nest, and they would hatch little chickens, little biddies, we called them. And I remember as a little girl, I found one of those nests up in the hayloft. And I found the nest just as they were starting to crack out of the shell. And in my misguided benevolence, I began to help the little chickens, and I began to break away the shell for them. And I was horrified when I watched every little chicken that I helped began to die. And what I didn't realize, it was the struggle to free themselves from the shell that gave them the stamina to live. In a real sense, my kindness killed them. And whenever I want to do too much for my children, I think about those little chickens. And when we give our kids too much, and we keep breaking the shell away for them and making life easier and easier, sometimes we rob them
Wow.
I agree with her.
Well, I love that she said misguided
Benevolent.
Yes,
Misguided.
misguided, and yet she was trying to help, killing with kindness.
Yep.
Do we
she
do
did
that?
she did too much for those chickens, okay?
Yeah.
But I believe you should help your children if they need it, and if they're trying and they're doing their best. You shouldn't rescue them every time.
Because some parents are just big softies. I've watched my father help my siblings into paralysis. Now I'm the only one that didn't get helped, and I find a way to make it when I got to do something.
Yeah, but you don't want to see your kids starve, and you don't want to rescue them every time. There's, even Proverbs tells us you take care of your family. So when do you cut that off?
Sometimes they need to starve.
Do you cut it off at 16?
Doing some stuff that they're not
cut it off
supposed
at
to do.
18.
I think you have to have balance.
You have to have balance, and to
And
be a
that's
mother
hard.
and have balance is truly a miracle.
It's tough.
Let me tell
Yeah,
you.
you don't have children, you'd have a different perspective.
Well, I got nieces and stuff, and I want them to have everything.
That's right. Okay. Well, is she like a second mom to you? Advice for daughters-in-law when we return. And Shirley's daughter-in-law reports how she's doing on mastering the steps to the in-law dance. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. We're having a rather lively discussion about mothers-in-law, and Shirley is the only one here that is one. Her son, Trevor, and his wife, Relatia, they just had their first child. And Shirley was there for the birth of baby Mackenzie. Here are some candid comments from Relatia on how Shirley's really doing in her role as mother-in-law.
I think me and Shirley have a wonderful, fun relationship. We just have a great time when she comes to visit in Arizona. I'm from South Africa, and we're generally a little reserved, so it took me a little time to get used to Shirley. It's part of her charm. She wears it on her sleeve. She's going to be very honest, and it took me a little time to get used to it. There's no favoritism. She treats me just like her daughter. We have a lot in common. We like the same things. She gives me great advice. My relationship with Trevor, he respects me, he respects his mom. The only thing that he does is he'll ask her for advice out of the blue, like decorating questions that never came up, and he'll always ask his mom's opinion. I think sometimes it's difficult taking a mom's place for the daughter-in-law because I think a son looks up to his mom, and you try to be the best that you can, and you try to cook maybe the same things that his mom used to cook. Sometimes we feel like we just don't measure up. One piece of advice I would give mothers-in-law is try not to interfere too much, especially in a new marriage. There's so many outside interferences and stress already. I think it's very difficult. I also think parenting can be an issue if you want to raise your kids a certain way and mother-in-law is trying to help and maybe it's not what you have in mind. I really think that can be difficult. So I think that's something mothers and daughters have to talk about. How are we going to handle the new baby? Do you want me to pick her up? Do you want me to ask before I do this?
Can I pick her up, Relatia? Sure. Did you wake up? Yes, it's awake. Hi.
If I could change one thing about our relationship, I would have my mother-in-law closer. I really like to have her in Arizona, especially now that we've got a daughter and we miss having her close by, and she can give me a lot of advice with my daughter. It's my first.
Hey, Grandma.
I would love to have her closer by for the little advice and cooking tips and things like that. You never know what she's going to say next, but that is part of her charm.
See, I think communication is crucial here. And can I add selective communication? Because even in dealing with boyfriends, I had to learn early on not to discuss their sons a lot with their mothers and to just keep the business.
Well, but Relatia and I talk about Trevor all the time. It works.
Poor guy. Yeah, but you know what?
It doesn't work
but you probably don't interfere and get in the middle of their stuff, and a lot of mothers do.
Oh, Jerry and I have a couple of times, and that was bad. But you know who it was?
You know who
it wasn't reacted. My son reacted, not my daughter-in-law.
Because they feel like they're on the outside. Listening to the mother and the daughter-in-law discuss them, that is definitely
a bad thing.
But Shirley, I love that it's your charm. I love that it's your charm.
She accepts me for who I am.
I appreciate that. And for a young woman to have that perspective from a different culture, that's a very big deal.
I told you, I'm blessed. We're totally different, but she accepts me as I am, and she loves me anyway. So thank God. Well, having a second set of parents is a nice concept. More love, more support. But often that's not how it turns out. Here's some advice from Annie for you wives.
Okay, what about the daughters-in-law? What's the biggest mistake they make?
The daughter-in-law, her responsibility is to honor his parents as she would her very own. It's a tedious tango. It's a fragile dance. I kept saying how fragile. And I do believe the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship is the most fragile of human relationships, because one wrong look, one wrong word, and years are unraveled. It's just the nature of that relationship. And my mother-in-law, I have a wonderful, wonderful mother-in-law, but, I've been known to tread lightly and bite my tongue a time or two. And whereas with my mom, you just kind of lay it out there, but it's just a little different when it's your mother-in-law.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what people want? They want to be appreciated. They want to be acknowledged. The mother, a lot of times, I think moms who just will not back off and will not let go, it's because she doesn't feel appreciated. She wants that daughter-in-law to say, "You did an incredible job. I am married to a really wonderful person, and I had nothing to do with it. You gave me a really wonderful man." And likewise, the daughter-in-law longs for that mother-in-law to say to her, "You're a good wife. If I could have chosen anyone in the whole world, I would have chosen you. You served my son and your children so well, and I appreciate you." Everybody wants to be appreciated and acknowledged.
Fragile relationship.
Yeah.
I thought that was key.
Yep, it is.
That one wrong look, one wrong word, and can breach that relationship. Because I know I've experienced that with my own mother-in-law.
Yeah, what about your mother-in-law, Tammy? You have been strangely silent.
No, she's a wonderful woman, but we have had a very, I think, tenuous dance for 20 years.
Well, I have to comment on it, because I've been talking about how wonderful my relationship is with my daughters-in-law. But that could change. That could change. It's fragile, and I have to still watch. I can't just take them for granted.
That's right.
And I love what Annie said about the compliment. They want to know that they've done a wonderful job as a wife for your son. And we tell them all the time, you're the wife that God chose for our sons, and that's so important.
It is, and to not criticize his mother to him. I find if I have an issue with her, I need to go to her directly and not start this nitpicking back and forth.
See, I don't do that. That's taboo.
Well, we got this letter in the mail about, this family. They all took the pictures together. She's been married to the guy for 15 years, and when the mother-in-law had him developed, she only had them and the child, and she didn't feel like a member of the family.
Yeah, that's not
Tell us a mother-in-law
Okay,
joke.
this is great. Joan Rivers told her mother-in-law, "Your house is my house." She looked at me and said, "Well, get the heck off my property."
And I know that's not the word she used.
No, it's not.
I think that's probably why God says cleave, and when you take the C off, it means leave. Hello. Are the in-laws a main source of trouble in your marital paradise? Well, how do you stop the bleeding? When we return.
Well, we've been talking about the precarious world of mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law. Painful words, misunderstood feelings. Here are some mistakes to avoid as you waltz around the floor in the mother-in-law dance.
We know that sometimes the relationship does go south. I mean, there's just personality issues, or you do overstep your bounds, you hurt feelings. What do you do to rebuild that relationship?
I had one woman in particular that really shared the depths of that, and had her mother-in-law introduced her to her friends as, "This is my fat daughter-in-law." Not nice.
Oh.
Not nice. And I asked her, I said, "Well, did your husband ever intervene?" And she said, "Oh, he was a bigger target than she was." She said meaner things to him than ever to the daughter-in-law. She'd been widowed twice. She had built a concrete wall around her to keep hurt away, and she had kept love away too. But the daughter-in-law gave me some really good insights on things that she did that I have in the book, of just very practical things she did to get along with someone who would not get along.
What were some of those things?
She tried to keep humor in it, and she would send the mother-in-law like little cartoons of things that were funny. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting thing? And she said, and she really started to get it. I mean, instead of writing a long letter, she'd write a note and she'd send funny things, just trying to keep a light thing. Well, what happened was the mother-in-law died unexpectedly. So when they went in to put the house in order, they saw how the mother-in-law actually lived, because they never saw any of this when they came to visit. On every, like in front of the kitchen window was a little post-it note. That's where she prayed for her grandson. In the bathroom, on the mirror, was a note, pray for the daughter-in-law. All over the house were little post-it notes that wherever she went, she prayed for her family members. This woman said, never in a million years would I have ever thought that this woman took such a concern and really prayed for her family, because she never let on that she was that kind of person at all.
Okay, let's get real. You do not say a mistake is definitely telling people that your daughter-in-law is fat.
No, that's terrible.
It's totally unacceptable.
But she was talking out of her pain. She had pushed people away. And, you know, and when they saw these notes for praying for people, I mean, they saw that there was another side to her.
Yeah.
You know.
And I understand issues, okay?
I understand that, but there still is a boundary issue there,
my
too,
goodness,
because
yes.
you put yourself back in that position over and over again, it will ultimately destroy any hope of relationship with that person.
It was terrible.
You know, one of the letters we got from a viewer was that her father had been sick and she was running back and forth to the hospital for over a month, and she had 2 small babies at home, and finally the father died, you know, and so she went to stay with her mother, and the mother-in-law came and scolded her when she stayed there and said, I don't want to have to do this much laundry for you again. Scolding her in her time of grief.
Definitely another mistake. Another issue that seems to really be affecting families is the issue of divorce. Annie's coming up next to teach us how to handle our in-laws when they become our ex-in-laws, maybe outlaws.
We live in a society where divorce is a painful reality. What happens when there's a divorce, and how do you relate to ex-daughters-in-law and these grandchildren?
There was a variety of ways of people dealing with it. But, you know, I really encouraged in that chapter, I encouraged the mother-in-law to be the bridge. For the daughter-in-law not to badmouth the son. No mama wants to hear her boy talked about, even if he is a rascal. You don't want to hear it. So don't do that. You know, don't put that burden on your mother-in-law. Realize that she's lost a lot too. But just I encourage the mother to be a bridge, to be that love bridge, and to be the mature woman that reaches out. You know, sometimes the daughter-in-laws are financially ruined. Their dreams of growing old with this man, the children being divided with the holidays, it's just such a loss. And for the mother-in-law to acknowledge, you know, I'm not going to get in the middle of whose fault it is, but I want you to know that, you know, if I can help you in any way. And I think sometimes just that call saying, boy, I wish this hadn't happened. But I love you, and you know my dilemma. Sometimes the son brings a new family in, and then what's the mother to do? You know, she's it's a rock and a hard place.
Being a bridge, I like that. You know, one of the viewer letters we got said that after this woman got divorced from her husband, she called her mother-in-law and said, I'm so sorry this happened. And she cried and everything. But after that, she never called or reached out to her or the kids after that. That's horrible.
I think it's terrible, because regardless of what happens, she should not abandon those grandchildren.
Right.
They're still her grandchildren.
And she still has opportunity to influence the lives of her grandchildren.
Absolutely.
Which is a very important aspect of being a grandmother.
Right.
Is
and
that
still be a friend to the wife. Hello, all of a sudden you're not a friend anymore?
Yeah.
That's irresponsibility as far as I'm concerned. Well, we'll be right back with some final thoughts. Stay with us.
One final question, Annie. What encouragement would you give to a mother-in-law or a daughter, a son even, who's sees this fractured relationship and they're really struggling, can you give them a word of encouragement or advice?
Well, this is very difficult. I believe I would say to the son, love your mother, but your allegiance is to your wife. And I know that may be very difficult, but I think you can love two women, just as these women can love one man and still get along. It is a dance, and in a dance there's give and take. And your real focus is supposed to be on the other partner, not on your own feet. When we do it God's way, and the focus is on you and your focus is on me, we're going to dance, and it's going to be beautiful.
Well, it is a very complex situation. There's so many things that enter into the mother and daughter relationship, daughter-in-law relationship, and I think that we have to be very aware it goes both ways.
Well, I love what Annie said. It's give and take. In a dance, it's not about you. Right. You think about your partner, you think about that other person, and it can be something beautiful, but selfishness and self-serving purposes get in the way of that so often.
Well, that's true because, mother-in-laws need to really check out why they hang on to their sons the way they do, because sometimes they're transferring their own unfulfilled relationship with their husband onto their son and making him the surrogate husband, So you got to be able to release him to love, but I guess daughter-in-laws need to be nice, too.
But she said the mother-in-law has the responsibility of connecting the bridge.
And that's true. Be a bridge. I think that's so true.
And why is that?
Well, I have a great relationship, but I know that it is fragile, and I can't take it for granted. We can never take those relationships for granted.
It's true, Shirley. Recently, I read a quote that said, behind every successful woman is a proud husband and a surprised mother-in-law. Well, with almost 20 years of marriage to one man and one mother-in-law, I've learned a few valuable tips. 1, her way is not always the wrong way of doing something. It's just another way. Learn to embrace it and move on. 2, when a heated discussion transpires, ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want a relationship? Relationships win, hands down. 3, remember this simple truth. The man you chose to marry, who is the father to your amazing children, is here because of your mother-in-law. If you can't love her for anything else, you should certainly love her for that. See you next time.
This show is brought to you in part by the AW Circle of Friends. Join us. Visit our website at aspiringwomen.tv for all the details.